Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Jenaé, filling in for Vinnie tonight. The subject of our investigation is the cult mom conspiracy trial for Lori Daybell, formerly Lori Vallow. It's a tragic and bizarre case of a wife and a mother who committed a series of murders, all in order to run off with her doomsday cult leader husband, her convicted accomplice. And now she's going to represent herself at her next upcoming trial. Here's the story. Charles Vallow, a successful businessman, married Lori in 2006. They were raising a blended family, including Tylee Ryan, Lori's daughter from a previous marriage, and Joshua J.J. Vallow, who they adopted. They seemed like a happy couple, but their relationship deteriorated in the late 2010s as Lori became obsessed with doomsday religious beliefs, influenced by doomsday author and gravedigger Chad Daybell. In early 2019, Charles filed for divorce, claiming Lori believed she was a divine figure tasked with preparing for the end of the world. He also alleged she threatened his life. Then, on July 11, 2019, Charles was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, who claimed self-defense. No charges were filed at the time. Following Charles's death, Lori moved to Idaho, where Chad Daybell lived. In September 2019, her children, Tylee and JJ, disappeared. Lori then married Chad in November, just weeks after Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, died under suspicious circumstances. Concerned relatives pushed authorities to investigate. By June 2020, Tylee and JJ's remains were found buried on Chad's property. Lori and Chad were arrested and charged with murder. In 2023, Lori was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. And now Lori is charged with the murder of Charles, and she's defending herself against those charges. This trial is going to involve a close look at Charles Vallow, his life and his death, and the eerie things he said before his murder. He talked with the Chandler, Arizona Police Department about problems at home and the deteriorating mental health of his wife, Lori Vallow. Even then, he could see something was wrong, especially after the alarming statements he said Lori made to him.
Long story. She's had kind of a drug familiarity. She thinks you're LDS?
Yes.
She thinks she's married to Moroni in the past. This is her
You think she's what?
We're married to Moroni at the top of the temple. She's lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a God, and remember the 144,000. She's come. Jesus is coming next year.
And two others.
Threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes, and she said.
How did she do that?
My bishop right there is in the car. He was on the phone with me today when she said, "I will have you destroyed." That's what she said there.
Okay, that's not a threat to kill you.
Yesterday was a threat to kill me.
Okay. What did she say yesterday?
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
It's chilling to hear Charles Vallow speak like this before he would end up being killed. And that gets us to our first question in the investigation. We're looking into what happened to Charles Vallow. It's an important question as we come to a trial that has to do with Charles. Joining us, we have some really incredible panelists who can talk about this. We have Lori Vallow Daybell's uncle and co-host of the podcast, Tylee and JJ's Silver Linings. Rex Connor is with us. And we also have retired police commander, religious cult expert, host of the podcast, Profiling Evil, and author of the book, Deceived, Mike King. Rex, I want to start with you. Talk to us about Charles Vallow. What stands out to you as you're watching even that video of him in life? What do you want people to know about him?
Well, first of all, we all loved Charles. He was Lori's fourth husband, so we'd had experience with previous husbands, but I don't know who didn't love Charles. He's just a good person. And when they started going through this, it was a divorce. You know, and it was going to be ugly. Lori had ugly divorces before, and he was just, as you could see in the body cam, almost at his wit's end, eventually was at his wit's end, just trying to find something that made sense, something he could do to get help for Lori. That's what you need to know. He's under threats to his life, and he's out trying to do everything he could to get help for Lori. So that tells you a lot about Charles right there.
Yeah, Mike King, this is a case where the police department didn't move forward with any arrests or charges in the case of what he was telling them. Talk about what happened to Charles Vallow. How do we get to a murder trial?
Well, and I know you're not in any way suggesting this, Julia, but I think we oftentimes want to say, why didn't law enforcement do something sooner? There's a real difference between deviant kinds of behavior and criminal kinds of behaviors. And we see this deviance happening. We see these kinds of weird allegations that she's thinking that she's a god, that she's suggesting that she's going to do things to him to take his life. But we see him on the flip side doing everything he can to try to hold this thing together, get her the help she needs. He at one point tries to commit her. She works her way through that and comes out. And he's slowly losing traction as he goes along. And we start to see, as the behaviors continue, the unraveling of what I think is part of the motivation, and that is the fact that there's a life insurance policy in the background, that this is repetitive kinds of behavior where in previous relationships we've learned that she had a money train at the end of a death of someone else. Not suggesting that she committed the death of Ryan, but she certainly benefited from that. The children benefited from that. But most importantly, she starts creating this religious belief system, and she has to come up with revelation to support what the long-term plan is, which is to get rid of him so that she can have the money. And so that's what we see so often in these cult leaders, is that they come up with revelation that fits what the long-term plan is. So if we start taking it apart piece by piece, peeling the onion very slowly, we start to see all the motivations come to the forefront.
And you talked about police not having enough information. Here's a look at what they had at the time. They didn't have all that information that Mike just shared. What they had was this claim of self-defense by Alex Cox. So let's go back and listen to clips that the police had during their interviews, clips of those interviews. This is from the different people who were witnesses, including Lori's daughter, Tylee.
Then my brother heard all the commotion because he was in there in bed, and so he came out into the main room and I guess whatever.
What's your brother's name?
Alex.
Alex.
And he's hitting him with the bat, and they're on the ground, like grappling around or whatever. And then, it was all
And he
quickly.
And he hit your brother with the bat while they were grappling and stuff?
Yes, he was hitting him with the bat, like swinging the bat, back and forth, and they were kind of like on the ground, and I was like freaking out trying to go around, knowing JJ was in the car,
Yeah.
right? And so then he got up and he had the bat like this towards me, and I was going around the other side to try to just get out of his range where he couldn't hit me. And then I had told Tylee, because she was like on the ground, because after he took the bat from her, she fell back. And so I told her, I was like, go get in the car with JJ. I was kind of turned around, and we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you heard the shot?
mm-hmm.
Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it?
I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him, and so back around. So I don't know if he went in the house.
I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground.
I fell to the ground, and then my uncle kind of I saw him take a step back, so my uncle, I think, grabbed him and kind of took him back so he couldn't do anything.
You saw your stepdad take a step back?
Take a step back, because he was really close to begin with, and then and so my mom said to go with JJ, and so I ran out the door. Eventually, my mom came out, and then we left from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened inside of the house? Has your mom kind of explained it all to you?
I just kind of asked her, because I heard a noise, which I know what it was now, but it sounded like, because I knew that the base when I was in there, it sounded like someone like took it and hit it really hard against the floor.
Okay.
And so I was kind of like Al's okay, right? Because that's my uncle. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make sure that like my stepdad didn't do anything to my uncle.
You had said earlier that he had the bat.
Yep.
And he asked, like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
You had already told him to put the bat down, and then he just came at you, and you shot him.
Yep.
Okay. And you're thinking a couple times?
It was more than one shot.
You fire a couple times.
Yep.
You don't know where they're at.
They're gone.
They're gone. What happened right after that?
Right after that, I went to the kitchen and rinsed my hands off because I had blood on the back of my head. And then I went back into the room and put the gun down and grabbed my phone, and then went back into the kitchen and called 911.
Rex, when we're hearing Tylee there, the second voice in that clip, what are you thinking about what she is saying? It seems genuine, but I'm wondering what her relationship with Charles was like and whether or not she would lie for her mother.
Those are all good questions. Isn't it unfortunate that all the witnesses are dead? Alex, Tylee, JJ, Charles. I can't speak to the relationship. I wasn't in the home with them very often, just during family meetings, but I've heard conflicting stories about the relationship. And so I can't really speak to that. And I've heard conflicting stories about what went down between Lori's interview with the police, Tylee's interview with the police, stories I've heard from family members that talked with both of them. They're just all different stories, and they're different enough that you can't piece them together and say, oh, these are all consistent. It's just there are way too many consistencies, way too many questions.
And that's why we are here at the helm of a trial that is going to start over the death of Charles Vallow. Mike King, what's your analysis when you're seeing Alex Cox there showing the bloody spot on the back of his head?
I keep thinking about Charles Vallow, who played professional baseball. I think if he'd have taken a swing, he wouldn't have bunted. He would have really taken a swing, and I think it's all a bunch of malarkey. I'm so troubled by so many different things in this, Julia, from the timeline that suggests that he somehow, in those fractions of a second, had enough time to get to his room, take a weapon out of a solid case that it was contained in, somehow put a clip in the gun, chamber around, get out, fire 2 rounds in that fraction of a second that Lori says she's going around the kitchen. And that's only about a 7-foot wall there that she's getting around. And why on earth, if she's running from danger, she's coming right back into the scene is beyond me. There are so many inconsistencies that behaviorally it just doesn't make sense.
Mike King, we certainly appreciate your profiling expertise on this show. Thank you so much for being with us. Rex Connor is going to continue to stay with us because coming up, we're going to talk about another part of this trial, Brandon Boudreaux. What happened to him?
On October 2nd of 2019, someone parked in front of my house and shot at me and tried to kill me.
I said, that glove won't fit OJ, and if you don't ask him to try it on, I will.
Why do an experiment for the first time in front of a jury? It was utter incompetence.
We believe the glove was his.
It was a setup.
They weren't fitting it.
That was O.J. Simpson's best acting.
If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Trial and Error. Why did OJ win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone just shot my window.
Did you see the guy that
I didn't see who it was.
Brandon had dropped off his kids and he was coming back from the gym to his house. And as he pulled up to his house, he was still kind of in the street. And as he pulled up to the curb, a shot came from a nearby Jeep that was parked on the opposite side of the street.
The bullet hit Brandon's Tesla, missing his head by a few inches. The shooter's Jeep with Texas plates was registered to Lori Vallow's ex-husband, Charles, who, at the time, had been dead for more than 2 months, shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Brandon says he didn't get a good look at the shooter, but believes he knows who it was.
He believes that Alex Cox was the person who fired that shot. And he knew that Alex Cox was kind of the family hitman.
A disturbing 911 phone call and mysterious details that happened on October 2nd, 2019. That was Brandon Boudreaux calling for help after his car window had been shot out. Boudreaux is the ex-husband of Lori Daybell's niece, Melanie. And the shooting happened just a few weeks after Tylee and JJ were killed in Idaho, and about 2 weeks before Tammy Daybell, Chad Daybell's first wife, was killed in Idaho as well. The incident happened in the middle of a bitter divorce between Brandon and Melanie. Brandon did testify during Chad's trial in Idaho, and he talked about the shooting.
On October 2nd of 2019, someone parked in front of my house and shot at me and tried to kill me. As I was driving, I noticed a few things. My house, the driveway, there was like a Jeep parked right on the edge of it, where I would normally turn in, and there was nothing parked there usually. I'd only been there for a few days, but so far there was this van there, and like the Jeep was parked with its like bumper basically on the van. And it just looked at that place. It had a Texas license plate. There was no tire on the back of the Jeep. And you know how when you open and close a Jeep, there's like little tabs on the window. Those were sitting on the outside of it. So it just looked awkward. You know, it just was awkward enough that I noticed it right as I turned around the corner. The window opened up, and I saw a gun and a silencer. And my window shattered. I heard a bang, you know, all kind of in the same amount of time. And my immediate thought was just, I'm getting shot at. And instead of turning my wheel and into my driveway, I just pushed the gas and drove straight.
Brandon Boudreaux is one of 5 of the victims, the only one who survived to be able to take the stand and talk about it. So that brings us to our next question in this investigation. We're taking a look at what happened to Brandon Boudreaux. It's the subject of the second trial that Lori Daybell is going to be representing herself in. And still with us to talk about this case is Lori Vallow Daybell's uncle, Rex Connor. And joining us now, the host of the true crime podcast, Pretty Lies and Alibis. She knows many people close to this case. Gigi McKelvey is with us. Rex, I want to start with you because we're talking about, again, a bitter divorce in the family. Can you talk about the family dynamic between Lori and her niece and her nephew-in-law?
Yeah, we all love Melanie. She is. We loved her mom, who died several years prior to that. Melanie was a little mini me of her mom, reminded all of us of her. So we loved her, loved their little family, she and Brandon and their children. She didn't live close to that family, the Cox family, for several years. And then when she became of age, she was able to reunite. Lori became like a mother figure to her. Everyone in the family felt close to her, regardless of how far away you lived or how often you got to see her. But Lori really took her under her wing, and Melanie responded in kind, as much like Lori was a parental figure. And so that relationship, as it turns out, as Lori concocted and continued her strange religion, sucked Melanie into it also.
And Gigi, let's talk about Melanie's husband, Melanie's ex-husband now, Brandon Boudreaux. He's such an important piece to this story. What was it like? Walk us through what the reaction was from police at the time that this happened, because we know with Charles Vallow's case, it took time before eyes started to turn toward it being something nefarious.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon made them aware very early on and mentioned Charles Vallow being shot and killed. And I think really when this happened to Brandon, things sort of went into hyperspeed as far as the investigation. At that point, Nobody really knew the kids were missing. But, what's interesting is it was actually Brandon Boudreaux who found Tammy Daybell's obituary online and sent that to Kay Woodcock and said, Chad Daybell's wife died in her sleep suddenly in her 40s. So I think Brandon really aided that investigation where that tip he gave them had everybody start to look at this whole picture. And can I just say how lucky Brandon Boudreaux is within inches of his life. And thank goodness Alex missed, because that would have been, as we all know, victim number 5 in all this. But Brandon was very instrumental, I think, in getting law enforcement to maybe start tying some of these pieces together of the spouses dying, the attempt on him. And no doubt, Brandon has done very well for himself, had a big insurance policy, and I fully believe that was the motive behind the attempt on his life.
Rex, we aren't seeing the Chad Daybell trial in Arizona. We're seeing the Lori Daybell trial. Your thoughts on that?
I would have loved it if Chad was a part of this conspiracy charge. I believe completely that he was just as much of the conspiracy as was Lori. They're both, in my opinion, guilty of that conspiracy. And I'm with Gigi. She said it so well. I won't say it as well, but we're just fortunate that Brandon is still with us, that he missed. But I think people don't have a hard time relating how scary it was for everyone around, anyone connected with the family. Well, before the police really got involved, before the media, which we're very thankful for, really got involved, Alex was running loose. And in the family, most of us felt like he was killing people, which, of course, as it turns out, he probably was. And how do you know if you're safe? I mean, I personally didn't feel threatened, but his brother Adam and other people, Brandon, the people that worked with Brandon were scared. It's just a terrible, terrible time.
Oh, wow, I can only imagine. And Gigi, can you react to that as well when we're talking about Chad Daybell and him not going to trial? We've got Lori going first. Why do you think they couldn't put the pieces together there?
Yeah, I don't know, because he was so involved from the day Charles was shot, even calling the funeral home to get a quote on how much it would be to have him cremated and shipped to Louisiana, which is where his sister Kay Woodcock lives. And the thing is this, there's no statute of limitations. So at any point in the future, they could charge Chad. But having looked through all of the Gilbert and Chandler files for years now, I don't see how they couldn't charge him and even go in on a circumstantial case and maybe get a conviction. But according to the authorities there, they did not have enough probable cause or enough evidence they felt that would end with a conviction. But I tell you, that's kind of hard to believe once you see all of these text messages, and also the fact that while Alex was there in Phoenix waiting on Brandon, there were text messages between Chad and Alex that they never were able to recover. Maybe that was the key, but still, if I were prosecutors, I would say this is circumstantial. Let's go for it. They all deserve their day in court. I had somebody recently ask me, what's the point of having this trial in Arizona? Well, the point is, Charles lost his life. Brandon was nearly killed. They all deserve their day in court, even if Chad Daybell has the death penalty or Lori. Yeah, they all deserve their day.
You're both staying with us. Thank you for your analysis. Coming up next, we are going to keep talking about this case and what the jury's going to hear about these two victims, JJ and Tylee. Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Jenaé, filling in for Vinnie, and the subject of our investigation is Lori Vallow Daybell, the once doting mother turned doomsday cult mom. She's spending the rest of her life behind bars for killing her two children, JJ Vallee and Tylee Ryan. Here's the story. Lori Vallow Daybell is a convicted killer. In 2023, she was sentenced to life in prison for killing her children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, and conspiring to kill her fifth husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. She went on to trial after their bodies were found in June of 2020, buried on her so-called Doomsday Prophet husband, Chad Daybell's Idaho property. Lori had a defense team for that Idaho trial, but now the woman once called the Doomsday Cult Mom now wants to be lawyer Lori. She's representing herself in her upcoming Arizona conspiracy trial. She's accused of killing one of her husbands, Charles Vallow, and attempting to kill her niece's former husband, Brandon Boudreaux. Now, the big question looms. Will she take the stand in her own defense? And if she does, what will Lori be allowed to say about the children she's already been found guilty of killing? Now, this came up during a recent hearing inside of the Arizona courtroom, the one where she is still innocent until proven guilty. And the issue of how and if Tylee and JJ's deaths at the hands of their mother, Lori Daybell, would be handled if brought up during her trial. And this is along with her other convictions, including the conspiracy to kill Tammy Daybell, her fifth husband's first wife. And we're wondering how the court is going to deal with that even during jury selection. Let's take a listen to the arguments.
My concern would be that when the jurors come in here and start hearing about the case or hearing testimony about the case, they'll hear the names Tylee and JJ, which obviously were more, there was more publicity about those than about Charles Vallow. And so I think if we really want to ensure that the jury is unbiased and has had no pretrial publicity with regards to the defendant, we're going to have to question them as to their knowledge of her other convictions out of Idaho. That was something that was just incredibly all over the media.
I agree, but I think that may happen in individual voir dire. This initial questionnaire, if they recognize the name Vallow or Daybell and they've been exposed to something in the media about it, they should tell us about what they know about it and about whether they know about that other case and whether they know about anything that happened to it, about it. So I anticipate losing a number of jurors just based on that. But I agree with you. Some may say they've been exposed to it, but it wouldn't affect their ability to be fair. And in individual voir dire, we can explore those options. I don't want to necessarily taint the whole pool by saying, hey, she's got these convictions in this other state.
And Your Honor, I don't propose we talk about the convictions, but we will hear the names JJ and Tylee in this trial. So that's my concern, is if we don't raise those names, whether we put them in the list as people that they may hear.
What I could do is on question 15, where it lists out my name, the court staff, I need to include your name, the attorney's names, the advisory council's names in there. I'll add those. Do you have any objection to listing Tylee and JJ, because they will be mentioned?
No.
Okay.
They will be mentioned, but not necessarily how they came to be killed. Let's go to our next question in our investigation that we're looking into, and that's this one. What is the jury going to hear about JJ and Tylee, and how might something else come in? Joining us, Lori Vallow Daybell's uncle and co-host of the podcast, Tylee and JJ's Silver Linings, Rex Connor. And we also still have with us host of the true crime podcast, Pretty Lies and Alibis, and knows many people close to this case, Gigi McKelvey is with us. Gigi, let me start with you on this one. What do you think is going to come out at this trial in terms of the jury understanding it? Because there's been a lot of publicity. These jurors are going to be asked about that during jury selection. What are the odds that these jurors won't know that she killed her kids?
Well, it's very interesting. I have to tell you, when I was in Boise, Idaho for her trial, and I was there the entire time, I would go have dinner in a restaurant and people would say, oh, you have a Southern accent, you're not from here. I would tell them why I was there. You would be surprised the number of people that had no clue who Lori, Chad, or anybody associated with this case was. So I do think they will find their jury pool there fairly easy. But the thing is this, I don't understand how you're going to keep out of this trial that's going to go on for weeks that she was convicted of killing her kids. Charles's murder is part of a big nucleus that involves the murder of these kids. He was the first murder. They were all connected under Lori and Chad wanting to kill everybody that was around them so they could usher in the second coming. I don't see how it stays out, but the judge really didn't rule on how they would handle that when it comes to trial. What are we going to do? So it'll be interesting to see if it is leading that way. Do they send the jury out and then argue it out then and see what can come in? I'm not sure, but as of right now, they're just putting them on that list of you may hear these names, but these people will not be testifying.
Yeah, just to make sure that the jurors don't know them personally, which is unlikely. But that's interesting what you said about Boise and people not knowing about the case when it was a very big deal in Idaho. And yes, a big deal in Arizona, but perhaps not as much publicity in Phoenix as we saw in the Idaho area. Rex, what are your thoughts when you hear that JJ and Tylee may not be brought up in the way that would honor what happened to them and just show respect for what happened?
Well, here's what I hope in that regard. I'm not concerned about them being honored in the trial. What I hope to high heavens does not happen is that the door is open for Lori to tell the jury and anyone else the completely despicable, disgusting lie that she's telling, that she is wrongfully accused, because the reality is she didn't kill her children, that Tylee killed JJ and in remorse killed her herself. I do not want her to be able to parade that sewage in front of anyone. So as long as that is left out of it, I will feel that that's a little piece of justice that's served if she's not able to control and give her narrative.
Gigi, I'm wondering if jurors are going to be wondering why they're not hearing from Tylee. They're going to see her in the interviews. She's going to be a huge part of the Charles Vallow case, and she may even be the most helpful information for Lori to use.
Well, actually, the judge ruled that none of the statements Tylee made that day in the police station come into trial. So we will not hear anything that she told investigators just shortly after Charles was murdered, which I thought was interesting, because the one thing I found in covering this case for years, if you put those three interviews side by side, there are so many discrepancies between the three that were very obvious. I really thought they would bring her statements in because she was a witness in her own way to this, likely outside, but was there for the buildup. I was actually pretty surprised that wasn't coming in because it directly relates to Charles's murder. However, unfortunately, she is dead and cannot get on that stand and tell her story now in 2025 when this happened back in 2019. So I do think in a lot of ways it was the right call.
Yeah, that probably doesn't benefit Lori at all. And Gigi, just to follow up, we know that Lori's been trying to get more interviews that she say weren't turned over to her that may involve Tylee. Do you think there's a chance she'll be trying to get that in on her own behalf?
She may, but the judge made very clear we're past the deadline for discovery. We have jury selection in, 2 weeks, beginning March 31st. And so you think about it, then the state gets to interview people, and there's not enough time. I think Lori may end up and not be able to bring in a few of the things that she talked about at this last hearing because there simply isn't time at this point. We are down to the wire, and to get witnesses and have them give depositions and give the state time, I don't know. I just think she's going to lose out a bit. The judge gave her the option. We can delay this trial. You can have your expert witness look over phone records. And Lori said, no, I want my speedy trial. And so we are set for the 31st, and we'll see what the judge rules can come in and cannot come in as these things are brought before the court.
Yeah, we are down to the wire, so we will see what happens because she is not budging on wanting that trial to go forward. Rex, you're staying with us. Gigi McKelvey, thank you so much. We have a lot more to talk about because the question of Lori representing herself also brings up the question of, is she going to take the stand?
I presume the defendant will likely testify, so I don't know if we wanted to address that now.
Are you prepared to address that now?
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist Murder Trial. Weekday mornings, only on Court TV.
I was told by Jesus that I needed to go back and complete things that I had covenanted or promised to do before I was born. This caused me a lot of distress because I knew heaven was my real home, and I only wanted to be there. I was free from pain, emotional and physical. But then I was shown how I would help my children and others in the future, so ultimately I did agree to go back to my body.
That was Lori Vallow Daybell during her Idaho trial in 2023, addressing the court. She didn't take the stand in that trial, and instead she delivered a wild and rambling statement about heaven and Jesus and her dead kids, and even her fifth husband's dead wife.
Jesus knows me, and Jesus understands me. I mourn with all of you who mourn, my children and Tammy. Jesus Christ knows the truth of what happened here. Jesus Christ knows that no one was murdered in this case. Because of this experience, I have access to heaven and the spirit world. Since then, I have had many communications from people now living in heaven, including my children, Tylee Ashlyn and Joshua Jackson. I know for a fact that my children are happy and busy in the spirit world. Because of my communications with my friend Tammy Daybell, I know that she is also very happy and extremely busy.
You see Lori there sitting at the table with legal counsel. That's in Idaho. She's now opted to not have legal counsel because she wants to represent herself. So since she didn't testify in her first trial, we're wondering this, and it brings us to our next question in the investigation. Should Lori Vallow Daybell take the stand, and does she want to? Let's go to a piece of what was spoken about this inside of the courtroom. Let's first bring in who we have standing by to discuss this case. You have psychotherapist and author and host of Talking Live and the Bite Size podcast, Dr. Robbie Ludwig is with us. Dr. Ludwig, thank you for joining us. And I do want to play a clip from that hearing where Lori Vallow is asked that specific question about whether or not she is planning to testify.
I presume the defendant will likely testify, so I don't know if we wanted to address that now.
Are you prepared to address that now?
No.
I generally will, I guess I'll advise the defendant now that if you choose to testify, it's likely that the jury would hear about the convictions. But at your request, they could be sanitized, meaning that they would only hear about the fact that you have convictions as opposed to what the nature of the conviction are, but that would be up to you whether you want that information out or not. And then the jury would receive a limiting instruction that the existence of those convictions is only to be used for the purposes of determining credibility. So you should be aware of that when you make a decision on whether you want to testify or not.
She's not ready to explain that to the court yet, Dr. Ludwig, so we don't know if she will. The question is, should she? What's your analysis of Lori Daybell? And have you thought about whether or not she may be a person who will want to testify this time around, or why she even wants to represent herself at all?
Well, clearly Lori has a delusional disorder, and her grasp on reality is questionable. Anyone who decides to defend themselves in the court of law, their sanity should be questioned, because when you're not an attorney, when you're too emotionally involved in the case, when you can't practice the law. It doesn't look good for those people who are defending themselves. But Lori Vallow Daybell seems to communicate with Jesus as to what she should do. And there's a lot of defense mechanisms. You know, everything she said in that earlier clip where her children are happy in heaven and she didn't want to leave heaven. These are all ideas she has to make herself feel better and less guilty about what actually happened. So whether she takes the stand or not, she shouldn't, but whether she will or not, I think will depend on her delusional system at that time.
Yeah, we learned she'll have to write out the questions in advance and give them to her standby counsel to ask her questions. Let's also bring in Lori Vallow Daybell's uncle, Rex Connor, is still with us. Rex, were you surprised that she's representing herself, and do you think she's going to take the stand this time around?
I think she'll take the stand. Was I surprised? I adopted one of my daughter's outlooks on this whole situation. That daughter was Tylee and JJ's nanny for a while, and she said, Lori is so mentally ill, she's not going to surprise me, no matter what she does or what she says. So in that regard, I'm not surprised. I'm sickened by it. I wish she would just admit she's guilty and not put everyone who she used to love, Colby, her son, Kay and Larry, her parents, her surviving brother. Why put everyone through this? We just don't know what's going on in that sick mind, sick and evil mind.
Rex, real quick, a follow-up. Is there anything you'd want to hear from her if she does take the stand? Is there anything left you think she can reveal?
The only thing I want to hear for her is, I'm guilty, that's all I have to say.
Dr. Ludwig, let's talk about Lori and her decision to represent herself. But also, she has had this shift. She's wanting this speedy trial where she wants to go immediately, even though she's already serving life behind bars. Your thoughts on perhaps what is part of that thinking?
Well, when we look at Lori, she's also very grandiose. And there's this sense that she can convince anyone of anything. Her great beauty can captivate and seduce people. And I don't know what she allows herself to have access to. You know, if somebody is delusional, they have these fixed beliefs that can alter what reality really is. So she may really believe Jesus instructed her, that this was all part of a grander plan. She was interviewed during one interview where she said she had a vision of her future self where she was free. This is all wishful thinking that gets kind of diluted in her mind. So, I mean, we're seeing somebody who is very ill, but is grandiose and doesn't seem to acknowledge that.
So much to unpack when it comes to Lori Daybell and really the horrific things that she's done. But I appreciate you all giving your expertise on this subject. Dr. Ludwig and Rex Connor, thank you again. Lori Daybell has demanded a speedy trial in this case. And even though she's already serving out that life sentence, one that's without parole, no chance of getting out, she is still holding firm to wanting to get through these trials as quickly as possible. It seems she wants swift justice, but justice wasn't swift for her children or for her fifth husband's first wife, Tammy Daybell. It took months and even years to uncover the truth about what happened to them. And the loved ones of these individuals had to wait a long time before they got to the truth in a courtroom, the very ugly truth about Lori Vallow Daybell. Thank you for being with us. We're happy to have you along with us for Vinnie Politan Investigates. I've been filling in for Vinnie, Julia, Jenaé. We'll keep digging for those answers as the investigation here continues. Good night.